Okay, good morning, everyone. So this is getting ready for Pesach. Almost, I know we have a lot of questions. Mechirat Chomaitz. I'm happy if you want. I know I do it the shul, but I'm happy to. We could do it next Sunday morning. If you want to do it then, does that work for everyone? Do Sunday morning Mechirat Chomaitz?
You're giving a shul Sunday morning?
Or we could do the Mechira and whatever time we have. We could split up the time between the Mechira and the Shir. Well, so I could do it here. We could do the Mechira next Sunday morning if that works for everyone. And we just put it on the list for everyone to come Sunday. We'll sell. And if there's time to learn a little bit, we'll learn also. Try to get in the best of both worlds. So that sounds good. So we'll do that. We'll answer your question first about Mechirat Chomaitz, and we'll talk about the Kashering questions that we have. And so regarding the Mechira and how it works, good morning, good morning. So if someone, let's say, has an apartment in another place and they're going to be here, so what do you do about Bedikas Chomaitz? It's a very, very good shaila. So many in Klal Yisrael are makel to do Mechiras Chomaitz, and Mechiras Chomaitz has a few benefits to it. It's an issur from the Torah to own chametz, so you have to get rid of everything. But it's not easy to get rid of everything. It's expensive to get rid of everything. You know, different variables involved. So over the centuries, there was this idea of Mechirat Chomaitz. It became very popular that everyone does Mechirat Chomaitz. Usually it's done only people who have a big stock, etc. But it's done. And there are those that say that Mechirat Chomaitz is a fine Mechira. The sale is a legal sale. And if the guy would come in the middle of Pesach to take all of the Chomaitz away, you give it to him. It's a real sale. But if you don't, then that shows you took it as you made a joke out of it. So it's a real sale, and it's taken seriously. And some sell everything, real Chomaitz, noodles, things like that. Others say, well, it is a sale, but to have real chametz, which is an issur d'oraisa to own, pure chametz, and they don't want to rely on it regarding an issur from the Torah, and they rely on the sale regarding rabbinic mixture, stuff like that, ketchup that might have some vinegar in it, but not pure chametz like pretzels and noodles. And you have a range, and those who sell it, they sell it, and that takes care of the biblical violation of owning chametz, and that helps out in another way. The additional way it helps out is with the mitzvah drabanan. Because once you go ahead and you don't have any chametz, that's it. But the Rabbanan said you have to do bedikat chametz. Okay, so wait a second. I have bedikat chametz, I have to do it. If I have an apartment in Kiryat Sefer, let's say I own an apartment, I have to bedika there. So it's true I don't own anything. When Pesach comes, I rely on the sale, but I have to bedika there. When Pesach is when? Wednesday night is the Seder. So Tuesday night I have to bedika. So no, it's not my chametz. I don't need to do bedika. Now there are those that say, wait a second, the sale only takes place Wednesday morning at about 10 or so, 10:30. Right now it's Tuesday night. All of us are doing bedika. How do I not go back to my apartment and do bedika? Oh, because I'm selling it in 10 hours from now. Well, it's very nice you're selling it in 10 hours, but halachically nothing happened yet. So you need to go and either go do a full bedika in that apartment, or find a rabbi that does the sale not on the 14th, but on the 13th. So that way already Tuesday night comes, and it's not mine. But if it's yours, you can't say, in 10 hours, I'm going to do bedika, I'm going to sell this. I don't have to do bedika now. But many rabbis do rely on that. And in general, is to be lenient and rely on the 14th sale. And what's the idea? On Tuesday night, I'm looking at all the places. Like, here's the kitchen I'm going to be for Pesach. So that I locked it up. This area, I'm using those drawers. I cleaned it up. That's it. It's totally done. I go to my playroom. Okay, my playroom. I cleaned it all up. In that closet, I locked. Wait, I have my apartment carried safe. What am I doing with it? Oh, I'm selling it in 10 hours. As long as you have it worked out on bedika night, everything is planned out. It's true you own your chametz still in Kiryat Sefer. Yeah, but I have a plan. Bedika means I have it all worked out. I have a plan for everything. And many rely on that idea.
So you don't have to actually go.
And you don't have to go because I have a plan. I'm worked out. I'm organized for my apartment over there in the States, in Israel, in Kiryat Sefer, wherever it may be. And therefore, the Mechira is a good Mechira. And that's it. So I'll come Sunday morning. I'll bring the stars. Okay. If anyone wants to give any tzedakah, I split up between some local aniyim and also I try to get to Lamana Chai. If anyone wants to, give maschitim, feel free to. If I get down to Manachai, whatever you feel like, no pressure at all. And so that'll be something we'll do the Mechira. So that will get anyone who has an apartment where they're not going to be in. That's it. Now the only thing is, if you're selling the apartment, you're not doing Medika, that's fine. But then you can't at the same time use it. You can't say, "Oh, I'm not checking because I'm not using it, but I'm using it." Well, I'm not using it. My friends are using it. Right. Well, which one is it? So then you're not selling it. So it's a joke. So we have to organize that. So what happens over there is, let's say your friends are just sleeping there. And they're going to be used the hallway, those 2 bedrooms and the bathroom. And then the other areas, the kitchen is all sectioned off. They cannot, no use of the kitchen. All those cabinets are closed up. Okay. But then whatever rooms they're using, they have to do B'dika.
They have to, or I have to?
You have to work it out between the 2 of you. Well, someone has to do B'dika. Of course, the sailor cannot possibly be on the place that you're using. Can't say I don't have to check the bedroom because I'm selling. What do you mean selling it? No, you're not. You're using it. So it has to be written in the shtar, which is what we're going to do next week. That we're selling all the areas that are marked off, except for bedroom A, B, and C, and a hallway in the bathroom. And someone, you or whoever's going to stay, has to do proper B'dika on Tuesday night.
So I can ask them.
Yeah, if you're letting them your apartment, the least they can do is check it.
And they burn the stuff for me and all that stuff.
Well, they're probably not going to find any real chametz anyway, I
But
imagine.
you're supposed to put it out.
Oh yeah, so they could put it out and they burn it, exactly. And you'll do that over here in Harmony.
And I'm covered.
Yeah. Right. Okay.
Thank you.
Yeah. Wait. Did you have a question?
If someone's renting an apartment, is the responsibility of the renter or the?
It's a good question. The Gemara actually
What
talks
is it?
about it.
What
Who
should I-
has the obligation? Hasocher or the maskia, the renter, the owner? And it's a whole discussion in the Shulchan Aruch. Okay, it's even brought down in the Gemara. What happens if you set up the rental and you assume that it was going to be checked and you come in, it wasn't checked? Does that undo the whole deal? So it's a very nice question of Choshen Mishpat, monetary business rentals, and Or Chaim Hilchos Pesachim. You should just work it out. People should just work out what they're going to do. If they're first coming in 2 hours before Yom Tif, so maybe you should do the B'dika the night before. They're already taking over 2 days before Yom Tif. You have to just work out the details, in a good, proper manner. Okay, so that's regarding the Mechiras Cham. What? Well, the sale that's when the rabbis are selling. It's always to a non-Jew. Oh, you're saying if someone's going to be using it? Oh, that's good. Is that a Lamaisa question or a theoretical Lamdisha question? It's a very nice question. What if I'm renting out? So then I am the owner. And so there's a nice discussion in the Shulchan Aruch where everyone has to have some B'dika. You have to have a B'dika. So if you have a place where you're going to be and you're doing the B'dika, that takes care of that. So now over there, if it was totally sold, everything is sold there. You sold it to, the guy. And now who's using it? A guy's using it. And I already have my place and do B'dika. And simple pshat is that he doesn't have to do B'dika. You don't have. Well, the fee of having a guy is a general all-year question about does the all your kalim become trade? You have a guy there where no one's looking in on him or her, and even when you have a maid at home, you leave for 3 hours. It's a complicated. Yeah, it is. It's not simple. People got live-ins who are cooking, and then you go out for hours for vacation for a day or so. It's not simple at all. Okay, so that's a little bit about B'dika and Mechira. Yeah.
Okay, I have an apartment in Boca, and we close it all up. We're not going there. Nobody's staying there over Pesach. However, we pay an apartment watcher to come every so often to check the apartment, make sure there are no floods or leaks or whatever. Do we have to arrange for him he's a guy. And a bunch of us use the same guy. Do we have to arrange for him not to come in during the week of Pesach?
Very, very good question. So you sell the apartment,
When we sell the chametz, we're selling the whole apartment.
and you don't do badika because you left
But
already.
he comes, I don't know when his schedule is to come in.
Wow. Very, very good question. Because from a Choshen Mishpat standpoint, you really sold it off, right? It would have to be written in the star, in the contract, written that yes, it's selling it to the guy, but you request permission from the guy who's buying it, you can request permission for the buyer, the caretaker, to have access to go in. But if he anyway goes in once every few weeks, it would be ideal to not go in Pesach.
So we can contact him and tell him just don't
Yeah.
come in.
Exactly.
And a bunch of us, we can get together with the whole group and say, don't come in.
Correct. That would be the best move. Very good. Very good.
You can look through the window, but you can't go in.
Right. Right. Right.
We don't have to, we're done.
That's right. Okay, very good. Okay, so that's a little bit about the Bedikas Chametz and about Mechiras Chametz. Okay, very important stuff. And
You selling him the
So-
chametz? This
No.
boy?
no, he's unrelated.
I'm saying you have a problem.
Yeah, he's unrelated. He's unrelated. Yeah. Okay, very good. So now, last week we went through all the categories and the key terms that we had last week's Kabbalah Kaffolto. Kabbalah as something absorbs. That's how you get it out. And there are 3 key elements in the Shulchan Aruch that you could get it out of. Surprisingly, wood, which is the surprising one, because many people think it can't be. But often you have grooves, and it's just hard practically, but theoretically you could kasha wood. So Hagala. Then you have the metal, right? Any kind of metal you could kasha as well. And then you have stones, right? When you have a proper stone, those all could be kashered, and you apply the rule Kabbalah Kachbal. So everyone agrees that cheres, stone, pottery, china cannot be kashered. It gets in, it doesn't get out. And then the tricky one we mentioned last week was glass, where the 3 opinions mentioned, 2 are mentioned in the Shulchan Aruch from extreme to extreme. The Shulchan Aruch mentions that glass doesn't absorb at all. And then the Ramah says it does absorb. Not just absorb it, it's like pottery can never come out. Okay, where science fits into this whole discussion is fantastic, but not for now. Then there's a middle opinion. The Mishnah Berurah says, and the Shatzion says that what? That it does absorb, but you can get it out through Hagala. And the Mishnah Berurah and the Shatzion mentioned actually, we're a little nervous that glass, boiling up glass to such a degree, it might break. It's 5.
The pirates.
Well, no, this is Mishnah Berurah writing 100 years ago. Pre-Pyrex. Pyrex came along right as he was writing that. He was writing in the 1920s or so, the early 1900s. Pyrex came out about 100 years ago. So the Corning Company first came out with it, and then it became very popular in the last century. So he was writing it right around the same time, but he was talking about regular glass. And he says, well, we're nervous that you're not going to kasher it well because you're nervous, not going to be more. You want it to be bubbling hot water, and you can be nervous to put it in, it's going to break. So now, if you move up a few decades since Mishnah Berurah, and you have this new kind of glass, so say, wait a second, maybe glass today is different than 500 years ago. And then when the Ramah says in the 1500 years ago we're stringent by glass, maybe he didn't mean the glass. Maybe he didn't mean the glass we have today. He meant the glass for 500 years, but the glass is much more durable. You could cook on the fire. You could have a glass pot on the fire. Anyone ever have anything like that? A Pyrex on the fire? Like, wow, that's a phenomenon. On the fire, who would ever think of such a thing? But you can have that. So that kind of glass, maybe you maintain that there, even the Ramah and the Ashkenazic minhag would not be to be stringent. Do you hear the thinking? So you have some great poskim that said that maybe Pyrex, even Ashkenazim could be lenient. And you have others that say that, no, not so simple. Not so simple. Minhag is the minhag. But others say, no, but the minhag is by glass. Old-fashioned glass, not the Pyrex glass. So we're not breaking the minhag. This is something new, which didn't exist. And there is no minhag on Pyrex. The minhag is on the old-fashioned glass. Do you hear? You hear the debate. So yeah.
We found something that is glass on the top of the drinking bowl.
Yes. 3 days.
Okay,
Right. That's called the Eroy. Good. Everyone. Everyone holds by Eroy. It's an open halacha in the Shulchan Aruch. Halavai, hopefully we'll get to it today. If in a short precious time we have, hopefully I get to read that. It's in the Shulchan Aruch, openly discussed in two places. It's discussed in Orach Chaim Tov Nun Aleph, which all halachas of preparing for Pesach, and in the strangest of all places, in Yoredei, which is fine. Yoredei is kashrus, but not in the regular kashrus section of Kashering Kalim all year long. In the laws of Yayin Nesach, idolatrous wine. Idolatrous wine. Why would it be there?
Boil the wine.
If you boil the wine, or you have it in the casket, or you have it in the glass, this wine that's prohibited, and now you want to kasher your kli. But there, it was not necessarily through cooked; it was through sitting for days in there. Is there a way? Is there a way to get it out? And there, the Shulchan Aruch talks about Eroy Shlosha Yamim of 3 days, filling it up, sits for 24 hours, another day, and that's what it's discussed. So hopefully we'll have a chance to look at it. Okay. If not today, it's so important for prepared for Pesach. It means on Wednesday there's still more questions, and as important as a parsha is, it's important that we're prepared for Pesach. I don't want to rely on Sunday because Sunday, I know who's around, and also it might be, selling will be a lot of business transactions. Big business is going to be happening here Sunday. So big deals, wheeling, dealing here. So I don't know if I want to count on that. So if we need Wednesday to have preparation for Pesach, it's more important. Not more important than Torah, learning Pasha, but it's lamais more. Yeah.
Now, just to make it clear that it doesn't sit in water for 3 days, you change the water.
Yeah. So we'll go over the Shulchan discusses it. So if not today, we'll discuss it. It's tough to knowledge. Aleph and the Shulchan are very important set. Okay, so Mitzvah Hashem will get through. Okay, so preparing the kitchen, and of course the big question is the glass tops. Everything else people more or less know. The ovens, the ideal oven is the self-cleaning oven. Not that many of them around Israel. Okay, anyone here have a self-cleaning oven?
I do.
You do have, yeah. Oh,
They
you
stopped making them. We got the last of the
Was that
We're
really?
not making them anymore.
Well,
Wait a minute, they don't make self-cleaning ovens?
They're stopping in Israel. They're not selling them anymore.
They don't
That's
sell
what I
them
was
in
told.
Why? Any idea?
I don't know.
So interesting.
Well,
So
somebody told me that they reserved, that they weren't selling a lot of them because I think they were under the misconception that when you self-clean the oven, it creates fumes in the apartment. Israel's very health conscious. And they said that it's not healthy to inhale whatever comes out of the thing.
Very interesting.
So,
Okay.
yeah.
So that's it. They're stopping it. Wow. So if you have I hear that. I mean, there's no, you'll be poisoned by kosher. Fine. Okay. Just got to balance the gashmis and the ruchnias, right? So we have it too. I mean, you definitely feel it in the air, but never was anything dangerous. Okay. So we have it also, the good old fashioned. Once the self-cleaning is Liban gum, it's 1,000 degrees Fahrenheit, that cleans everything. Anything you throw in there, it's going to be kosher. The only thing is, it may not exist. Whatever does exist will be kosher. So that's the ideal. You leave your grates in there, everything, that's the ideal. Okay. The only thing is, some say even the grates from that very oven, some manufacturers say it's not going to get ruined, but it might get discolored. Others say, who cares? I just want a kosher. Right? Have you put your grates in? Have left them in?
But I know I know that happened in Lisa.
Well,
and you left it in?
In the States, I bought separate grates for Pesach because they said that if you leave the grates in, it sometimes burns out the circuitry because it gets so hot and the heat, grates absorb the heat because they're metal.
Right.
And it creates even more heat.
Wow.
And it burns out the
computer.
So I went and I bought
Right.
separate, but not
Very
in
smart.
Israel.
Right.
I couldn't get them.
Very smart. So taking out the grates has advantages. Just then, how do you kasher the grates? It's a little bit tricky because it's not simple. It's
You have to take out the metal. You have to take out the metal things and you get new ones.
okay. So
I have in my apartment.
Why do you have to
rented
take out the metal
from-
things? Why can't you kasher them in the oven?
You cannot kasher them in the oven. It says specifically in the book that you have that you have to, and
in which book?
when I bought my
In the
stuff,
manufacturer's book, not the law, right? The manufacturers don't want you to leave it in there for whatever, that's right, that's an issue that you have in terms of not halacha, but just dealing with your oven. So halachically, if you leave it in, it's fine. Halachically, you have to just deal with the
In
practical part.
America, what I used to do, because the grates would expand, is I would put them in that way so they had space to expand. Never had a
that's
problem, and I
nice.
would also put in the.
Okay,
Chocolate.
I have an oven I haven't used yet. It's brand new. Is there any preparation?
No, that's great. That's
No, do
easy.
you have to do anything with it, or is it considered kosher?
It's
and
kosher,
just
that's
use
it, yeah, that's it. So the mice of the ovens and the stovetop. So the ovens,
Somebody tell me how to heat it up.
yeah, unless there's something new going on in the manufacturing where they put some oils on it, but I haven't heard that. I don't know, maybe some of the specific manufacturer. Yeah, I have no idea what the facts are. Like they want to say that some kalim have oils and stuff. I don't know if anything. Maybe send me the exact model. I can look into it. Okay, so just let's move on over here. So with the oven, the libun gamor, the real intense self-cleaning is halachically the best, but you can't always have that. It's not that realistic, especially if you tell me that's getting less and less in Israel. So the post can rely on that, you clean it out well, let it sit for 24 hours, then you put on the highest setting for a good hour. Cleaning out well means really like an easy off type of serious cleaner that it kills everything there, really made everything pogum, not edible in any way whatsoever. And a good hour. Regarding the shelves there, the grates, it's not simple because you put stuff falls right on it. If you could go to one of these places, the Kupash El Staka and Rehov Ayalon, they have the real burners over there, free service. I don't know what night, maybe next week, Sunday night. I don't know when they're going to offer it. Sunday the whole day. It's an incredible service. They have the water going all day and the fire going all day. It's an amazing, amazing chesed they do. So if you can have them burn you, great. That's the best halachically. Or if you could, it's on Ayalon. We have to see the exact. I don't know the exact. No, that you pay for. All the places are free on Habasur. Very interesting. They have them all over the place that you pay for. On Ayalon, it was actually for free. Maybe it's free in other places too. Anyway, so the options with the grates, the three options are. The ideal is if you just have the self-cleaning. That's not so realistic for many people. The next one is if you get grates just for Pesach. That's very good. If not, the next option would be that you go to one of these places where they have the fires and they really burn it up. Option number 4, not ideal, but if there's no choice, no, I should say, if there is choice, before we go to the next option, the next choice would be actually to go ahead and get a little, what's it called? A little oven for Pesach. And that is a good idea if you could do that. Okay, if you could do that, that would be a better move to go ahead and get a little oven just for Pesach. But space is not always realistic here in Israel, in small apartments, etc. So if you do need to use your oven and you can't get a separate rack, so you clean everything well, and then you put in the rack in the oven to be kashered together with the oven. Since it's not so simple that's the best type of libun, it's not simple. So it would be advisable if you do that to put aluminum over that rack. Solid aluminum, it's not going to be ruined, maybe 2 layers. Make holes in it so the airflow works. And that would be a good idea. Sometimes, it's always good to see what the din is, what's the leniency, what's the stringency. So it's a leniency to just go ahead and use the rack and kasher it. It's a leniency. So it's a good chumrah. I always say there's good chumras and there's chumras that where do they come from? This is a good chumrah. If you're going to use that rack, it's a good chumrah to go ahead and put tinfoil on it and make sure you have the airflow, put in the hole so you have the airflow. No, self-cleaning, that's it. Self-cleaning is the best. It's only if you're going to do it in a regular oven, and that would be the advice. Then what? No. You kasher it. When you kasher the oven, you put the in. You leave the grill. You leave the grate in there on the highest temperature. If you have self-cleaning, that's the best.
Let's say you don't have self-cleaning.
So then you leave it on the highest temperature. You clean it off very, very well. According to many, but since not everyone agrees, right? That's why I'm saying if you have other options, you have other grades, bought a little oven for the week, that is better. But not everyone could do that, so you have to be realistic. And therefore, People rely on just kashering the grape, but since it's not Liban Gamor, it's not 1,000 degrees Fahrenheit. So not everyone agrees with that level of kashering. So in addition, it is a good idea to put tinfoil in kasher as well. And put tinfoil and cover it as well with on the grate.
That's
The grates.
No, we didn't get to that yet. Okay, that's the oven itself. Now the
grate and the
grates.
grate.
So the grates itself, when you have the old-fashioned metal and the gas and the fires, like the good old days, right? So then you go ahead and the grates, you go ahead 15 minutes or so, where you leave it on, the burners, the good old burners, right? You leave it on, and then it's good to have some pot on it to make sure that the fire spreads to wherever it got during the year. So you want to have
Few
some.
layers of aluminum.
If that works,
Over
and a little bit
the
tricky, and you have to make sure you don't have the aluminum where it goes over the back and the fire goes. You have to just be careful. You have to just be careful about that. You know, once you start putting aluminum over the fire, where it's going to spread to, as opposed to take the biggest pot you have, which will guarantee to spread the fire as far as it went during the year, right?
Except it's flesh.
Talking about a chametz pot.
So the pot itself could be, the main thing is, even if it's a house that's fun, as long as it is dry and clean, because you just want to have that surface here. That's when theoretically you can have the aluminum, but just it could get a little bit, it could get a little bit tricky. You just want to have clean, dry surface, and that's it. Okay, and that koshers the grates. That koshers the grates, the burners. Okay, that's koshers the burners. And then you have the area all around, which is not koshered. So that's a little bit tricky. So some go ahead and put tinfoil in that area. And that once again is a good idea, because if stuff splatters and it goes there, it fell onto a chametzik surface. So you'll say, well, just throw it out, which is fine. So you just know that if that area, anything falls on, you're not going to go in and eat it. You're going to throw it out because it fell on it. So you could do that. The only thing is, let's say it splatters and hits that and then hits the bottom of the pot. It could get a little bit tricky. So there are those who just cover that area with tinfoil because you didn't really kosher that area. To go ahead and start pouring hot water in that area or near the grates, near the, the burners, it could get a little bit tricky over there. So that's not necessarily advisable. That's why putting the tinfoil, once again, I would say, is a good chumrah. Okay, good chumrah, I mean that it makes sense because it's a leniency not to do it, so it's a good thing to do it. Yeah, it's always want every sugi to know that chumrah. Yeah, that's a good chumrah. It's a solid chumrah, right? So here too, that would be the best thing over there, right? By the burners. Then you have the new question with the burners. The two new questions of the last 40 years and the last couple of years is the glass tops, which is the old-fashioned burner coil, just you have glass. Then you have the new ones. I don't know when it started, the induction, which is an amazing chiddush. The idea of having the burner with gas and fire, that's forever. The idea of having coils also, we've had it for a long time, many, many decades. The idea of having coil with glass, that's already for a few decades. The idea of having induction, it's a whole new phenomenon because it's not cooking through heat. Right? You're heating up the pan through the magnetic field. What a ha. And only when you have the right pan, not aluminum. Only when you have a proper metal magnetic pan, only then when it goes on the surface, does it click and gets things moving in the pan. The pan heats up, and that heats up two things. It heats up the food in the pan, and it heats up the area underneath, right? Okay, so regarding kashering glass, the Ramah said 500 years ago, we don't kosher glass. So it should be obvious that there's only one choice, to buy a few shekels, whatever it costs, 70, 80, 100, I know what it costs, a little burner, and you have that. It doesn't take up a lot of space. It's not like here, if we said going ahead on the grate, best not to do it, so get another oven. That's a lot of space, even besides a few hundred shekel, even if you find the Osha on 100 shekel, space is an issue, storing it, right? If Dorothy said we're not in Kansas anymore, So all of us can say we're not in America anymore, and Harmony, it's very tight. It's tight over here. So I understand that. Here, burner, it is not a bad homer at all. If you can afford it, it's usually not expensive, and just find space. That's not so bad. That is the best. But many are lenient. And what's leniency? 500 years ago, once the Ramah says, we don't kash the glass, we don't. The Ramah said we don't eat kitniyot. Until this day, Ashkenazim, don't eat kitniyot. We don't play around with minhagim. So how do you hear? So some say, many hold this new Pyrex that came out 100 years ago, 1920s and 30s, the Ramah never spoke about that. He spoke about standard glass. He didn't speak about this new kind of glass that could stand fire directly on the fire. He never spoke about that. And there's no minhag Ashkenaz on that. Minhag on eating beans, those beans that Ramah said 500 years ago, no, we don't eat till this day. That's minhag Ashkenaz. I have any questions. What about this derivative from the kind? Okay, you have detailed questions, but the general minhag applies. That's a totally different ballgame than what? Than Pyrex. So many are lenient. Rav Elyashiv just understands. It's not like, the modernische poskim. No. Sharum Mitsuyanim Bahalacha, one of the classic commentaries on the Kitzur Shulchan Aruch from Brooklyn, New York, 1970s, 80s, 90s. He wrote that idea. Rav Elyashiv writes that, but the minhag just doesn't apply to this. It's a nice svara. So now once you have that opening, that the glass there, minhag, was by standard glass, not the Pyrex, so that opens up. So how do I kasher it? So as I said, a person can get a burner, I think it's a good idea. But if you can't, or for whatever reason you're not going to, then some say just by putting on, when you have the coil glass top, so they say just putting it on, that will kasher. That's direct heat. So you have just like kashering an oven, that's the same heat kashering the oven. It's the same thing on the coil. And you have the direct heat on the coils heating up the glass. And we're lenient. This kind of glass could be kashered. Okay?
How do you get to the coil?
No, just put the coil on. You just press on.
Induction
No,
doesn't.
not induction. We're not talking about
Well, what
induction.
about the glass in between?
Good. So you have that, and that kashered the burner. What about the area around it? So that's a little bit tricky. Covering it up is not a simple thing to do. Okay. So some say you can have a pot of water boiling. Rav Rimon says this. Now others say this as well. They have a pot of boiled water, bubbling, and maybe put in a hot rock or something and then make it go over. And then just like it became chametz that way, now you're undoing it with the hot kosher water. Do you hear that? Others say maybe just put things, little trivets on that area, and any pots you're going to move over, move it to that area. Don't put any pots in that area, okay? Meaning you kasher it with you could just put on for 15 minutes that area, the burner area, and the other area, maybe you have the hot water going over, or maybe cover it, or you could put some kind of silicone or something in that's safe, okay? So some say you could do that. The induction oven, it's stove tops, the burners, so you can't put it on, it's not going to do anything. Okay, so some say just put the pot on, the pan on, and put it on. And just like you heat it up and chametz came in, now you're heating it the same way. And what about the water going over? So some say also have the boiling pot and let the water flow over. So however it became chametz during the year, then that's how it became. That's how you kasher it. So there are those who are lenient like that. Okay. And the newest thing on the market are these silicone pads that go on the induction stovetop, where they're thick enough that you're not resting your pan or pot on the stovetop, but it doesn't stop the magnetic flow. I actually went on the way over here. I was hoping to do show and tell. I went to 2 hardware stores, one in Ramat and one Bina, the main one out here. Both of them did not have it, unfortunately. So Ramon mentions those are really good because then you're not resting on the surface. You can't do that by the regular stove top or the induction one, where it's made.
Four burners, you put one.
Or just have 2 for that week and leave the other ones away.
On the burner, you put it or around?
On the burner itself, and it's between the burner and your pan, so it lets the magnetic force go through, but it's not, and it's heat resistance. It won't get ruined by that pan, and you're not having the pan on that surface. So
It's a good idea just to put it around as well.
Yeah,
You can put your
exactly. So I went to 2 hardware stores. Maybe others have it. I think Amazon actually sells them now as well, but I don't know if it's realistic to get it. So they are conscionable, but as I said, a person can go ahead and get a burner. I call that a good chumrah, okay? And but you have options. You do have options, okay? Any other questions? Yeah.
When you put the heat on your oven and the ice.
Yeah.
I always do that and then I use an insert.
That's what I call a good chumrah. If you have, I didn't mention that as an option. I didn't think anyone had them still.
Well,
That
not
is,
in America.
so I didn't think anyone had them here. That is a good chumrah. You have it because once you don't have libun gum or the self-cleaning 1,000-degree oven, the kashering is not the same ideal level, and that is a good thing. But poskim realize not everyone has it, and they rely on the heating up. Kibolo kachpolto. It was on 500 degrees Fahrenheit, and that's how I'm kashering it, which is a good svar. So, my pleasure. So that's getting the kitchen ready. I think I'm gonna. Oh wow, it's late. Time goes fast when we're learning Torah. Baruch Hashem. And any other questions? We'll have Pasha Wednesday if we don't have, but we'll leave Wednesday for either or. If there's questions on Pesach, we'll have that. And if there's time, either we'll do a little board on the Pasha, just do 3 minutes, a little plateau on the Pasha, but we'll leave this time also for Pesach preparation. Yes. Tuesday, what did I say? Wednesday. Listen, no, I'm not getting any younger. That's it. That's just what it is. I'm happy I remembered it was this week even. Yeah. Countertops. Okay, we'll mention countertops, and then I got to run back to work. Countertops.
Are you going taking care of the contract?
Sunday. We'll do it next Sunday here.
Okay, so we can do it.
Yeah.
And we should come prepared with something written saying.
Well, I have if you have it all right now, that's great. If not, I have the starter, write it out then. Okay. So countertop, maybe we'll talk about countertop Sunday. If you want to know in advance, basically countertop, you go ahead, has to be clean. If it's stone, you could do pouring hot water, but it's once again not a bit of cover it up.
Anyway.
Because it's not cautious it properly.